I've driven a ton of Subarus over the years, and while they've got the AWD game locked down, I've seen more than a few come back with oil burn issues, CVT complaints, and rough wear after 100,000 miles. They've got a solid rep for safety, but when it comes to long-term reliability, I think there are certain brands that can outclass Subaru. Hello everyone, this is Scott from CarlandTV. It's time to get in the front seat. As today, I'm breaking down 5 car brands I've seen hold up better than Subaru when the miles start piling on. And trust me, some of these might surprise you. Before I start, I would really appreciate it if you would push those buttons below. The subscribe button, the notification bell, all of them. This is not necessary, but those little clicks help a brother out. Plus, it pushes me to give you more valuable car-related content on your screen. Now buckle up, and let's get back to the video. First stop, Toyota. When it comes to reliability, Toyota is the gold standard. And I don't just mean that in a marketing sense. I've personally taken in Camrys with over 300,000 miles on the trade-in, and you'd be shocked how well they still run. One guy brought in a 2007 Tacoma with original drivetrain components, and the thing still shifted clean and didn't leak a drop underneath. It's not magic. It's just smart, simple engineering. Most Toyotas use naturally aspirated engines that aren't stressed, and they tend to stay away from fancy stuff that breaks down the line. You won't find nearly as many CVTs in their lineup compared to Subaru, especially in models like the RAV4 or Highlander where they stick to proven 8-speed or 6-speed automatics. That makes a big difference once you start climbing over 100,000 miles. Toyota also doesn't overload their vehicles with glitchy infotainment or experimental tech. What's in there usually works. And it keeps working. It's one of the reasons you still see so many older Toyotas on the road looking and driving like they've got plenty of life left. I remember selling a 2011 Corolla with close to 200,000 miles on it to a college kid whose dad was a mechanic, and the dad didn't even flinch. He said, "If it's a Toyota, I'm not worried." That's the kind of reputation they've built, and honestly, it holds up in my experience. Even the interiors last. The seats don't collapse. The buttons don't wear out like they do in some American brands, and the door panels stay solid without that rattly, hollow feel you get in cars that haven't aged well. You step into a 10-year-old Toyota and it still feels tight, like it was built with longevity in mind. Maintenance is cheap, parts are everywhere, and mechanics know these cars like the back of their hand. I've seen customers pick a used Camry over a newer competitor just because they trust it will get them through another decade without fuss. And honestly, they're usually right. Toyota doesn't build flashy cars, but they build ones that outlast the rest. Now let's go to Toyota's cousin, which is the Lexus. Lexus is what I call a worry-free luxury, and after years in this business, I've seen firsthand why folks come back to it over and over. You're basically getting Toyota bones with a premium finish, and that's a good thing. The RX 350, for example, runs the same tried-and-true 3.5-liter V6 that Toyota's been perfecting for years, and it's practically unkillable. I had folks bring up that their 2012 RX are nearing 230,000 miles, still on the original engine and transmission, and they ran smoother than some 2-year-old German crossovers parked on dealership lots. No transmission lag, no warning lights, no clunky shifting. Same deal with the ES and GX. They're not built to impress with horsepower or fancy gadgets, they're built to go the distance. Lexus doesn't chase trends like others do, which is probably why their vehicles don't suffer from the same long-term tech gremlins you get in something like a BMW X5 or Audi Q7 after the warranty runs out. And I gotta say, Lexus interiors age better than just about anything I've seen in this segment. I've sat in LS sedans and GX SUVs that are over a decade old and the leather's still soft, the wood trim hasn't cracked, and all the switches and buttons work like they did day one. Even the infotainment, while not flashy, is consistent and reliable. In fact, I know people who went from German luxury to Lexus and tell me flat out they'd never go back, just because they're tired of the constant repairs and sensor issues. Well, that's what it comes down to. Lexus gives you all the comfort, quiet, and class of a luxury vehicle, but without that creeping anxiety every time the check engine light pops on. You take care of basic maintenance, oil, brakes, fluids, and these things will give you an easy 200,000 plus miles without blinking. From what I've seen, that's a rare thing in the luxury world. Aside from Toyota and Lexus, another strong contender that can beat Subaru in the reliability department is Mazda. To be fair, Mazda doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to reliability, but in my experience, they absolutely deserve a spot on this list. It's a smaller brand, sure, but man, They overbuild their cars in a way you don't really notice until you live with one. Some folks trade in CX-5s and Mazda 3s with well over 100,000 miles, and everything still feels tight. No rattles, no fading trim, no sluggish shifting or whatsoever. Even the paint holds up better than you'd expect for the price point. And under the hood, Mazda sticks with naturally aspirated engines in most of their lineup, which means you're not dealing with the complexity or long-term risk of turbocharged setups or CVTs, like you are in a lot of newer Subarus. The Skyactiv engines might not sound like a big deal, but they're well-engineered, fuel-efficient, and surprisingly durable. I've seen plenty of them run trouble-free with just regular maintenance. What's really cool about Mazda is that they don't chase weird design trends or overload their cars with gimmicky tech. The cabins are clean, functional, and feel more premium than anything else in their class. I remember test driving a Mazda 3 Turbo and thinking, this feels like an Audi but without the Audi headache. That means a lot, especially if you have driven both brands back and forth. The switchgear is solid, the materials are soft where it counts, and even their infotainment system, while not the most awesome, is easy to live with and doesn't lag like some others in this segment. And when it comes to driving feel, they blow most of the competition out of the water. The CX-5 in particular handles more like a hatchback than a crossover, with steering that actually has some weight and feedback. Mazda just does the basics really well, and that's what makes them reliable, not just in the sense of fewer repairs, but also in how consistently solid they feel, even after years on the road. Skipping from Mazda, let's go to Honda, as it's also a brand that manhandles Subaru. You see, Honda has always been that brand where you kind of know what you're getting, and I mean that in the best way possible. I've taken in CR-Vs, Civics, and even older Accords with 180,000 to 250,000 miles on the clock, and the crazy part, most of them still drive smooth. No misfires, no hesitation in the transmission, no check engine light drama. These weren't all dealer-serviced cream puffs either. Some came in dirty, worn, clearly daily beaten on, but the drivetrain still felt rock solid. That is classic Honda. I'm talking about bulletproof engines, low-cost upkeep, and smart, conservative engineering. Even their newer turbocharged 1.5-liter engines, and yeah, they had that early fuel dilution thing in cold climates. But I've driven both pre- and post-software update models, and the difference is noticeable. It runs cleaner, pulls smoother, and you can feel they've refined the mapping. Compare that to some of Subaru's CVT-equipped cars where I've had folks complain about sluggish response, odd rev flaring, and even early replacements after 100,000 miles. It's night and day. Honda is not flashy, but it gets the job done, and more importantly, keeps doing it well into the 6-digit mileage range. Now, when it comes to all-wheel drive, I'll give Subaru props. They make it standard, and their system's been around forever. But here's what I've seen behind the wheel. Unless you're dealing with deep snow or you're hitting unpaved roads every weekend, Honda's all-wheel drive system in the CR-V or Passport does just fine for 99% of folks. I've driven them both in heavy rain, light off-road trails, even a few icy hills, and traction was always predictable and stable. More importantly, I've seen way fewer mechanical failures or complaints tied to Honda's AWD than with Subaru's setup, which is often tied to those same CVTs. Hondas also tend to be easier to live with from a service standpoint, oil changes, brake pads, fluids, and all that stuff, and you're good to go. There's no head gasket paranoia, no weird AWD clutch pack servicing, no premature CVT worries. If someone walks onto my lot looking for a reliable, low-maintenance daily driver that'll comfortably push 200,000 miles with minimal fuss, I'd recommend a Honda in a heartbeat, especially if long-term peace of mind matters more to them than off-road bragging rights. And the last entry here is probably something you'd be surprised with, and that's Hyundai and Kia. If you told me 10 years ago that Hyundai and Kia would be outranking Subaru in reliability, I probably would have laughed. But man, the shift I've seen in the past few years is real. I've been in this business long enough to remember when folks would walk away from a Hyundai Elantra or a Kia Sorento the moment they heard the brand name. Now, I've got buyers specifically asking for them. Starting around 2020, and especially from the 2021 model year forward, the jump in build quality has been undeniable. The materials feel more solid, the body panels fit tighter, and even the way the doors close has that confident thunk you used to only get from Japanese brands. I've driven the newer Tucson, Sportage, Santa Fe, and even the hybrid models like the Ioniq or Niro, and I'm genuinely impressed with how refined and reliable they've been, especially when stacked against something like a Subaru Forester or Outback, where owners are still dealing with CVT quirks and the occasional oil consumption drama. One of the biggest advantages Hyundai and Kia bring to the table is that 10-year or 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. It's not just a marketing gimmick, I've seen people use it. And what's wild is they're not just backing their base trims, even the hybrids and plug-ins are holding up surprisingly well. Even those 2020 or newer Subaru CVTs that come in for diagnosis around the 80 to 90,000 mile mark have few to no complaints of slippage or hesitation. Hyundai and Kia have kept things mechanically simple where it matters. No overly fragile turbo systems in base trims, and when they do use turbos, like in the Santa Fe 2.5T or the K5 GT, they tend to tune them conservatively so they last. These two brands went from being the punchline to being the ones that leave Subaru trying to catch up, and from what I've seen with my own eyes on the lot and on the road, they've earned that spot. Alright, let me be clear with this. Subaru still nails some key areas, and I'll give credit where it's due. That standard, symmetrical all-wheel drive is still one of the best setups out there for grip and stability, especially if you're up north or dealing with slick roads. Their EyeSight safety suite has come a long way too. It's responsive, and the crash test ratings are consistently excellent. If you're sold on that rugged outdoorsy vibe, sure, a Subaru scratches that itch. But if your priority is fewer trips to the mechanic and more peace of mind, I'd steer you towards something like a Toyota, Honda, or even a Mazda. They just tend to hold up better as the miles pile on.